There's a voice that speaks to you more than any other voice you'll ever hear. It's not the voice of a friend, a family member, or even a stranger on the street. It's the voice inside your own mind, the constant narrator of your experience, the inner commentator that never seems to take a break. This voice shapes how you see yourself, how you interpret the world around you, and ultimately, how you move through life. Most of us go through our days completely unaware of this internal dialogue. We let it run on autopilot, accepting whatever thoughts arise as truth, as reality, as who we are. But what if I told you that this voice, this mental script that plays in your head, is not fixed? What if you could learn to recognize it, understand it, and even rewrite it? The ancient Greek philosopher Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This wisdom, spoken over 2,000 years ago, points to something profound about the human experience. Between any event and our response to it lies a space, and in that space lives our inner voice, interpreting, judging, and creating meaning from the raw material of experience. Modern psychology has given us incredible insights into how this inner voice operates. Cognitive behavioral therapy, developed by pioneers like Aaron Beck and Albert Ellis, has shown us that our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are intimately connected. The way we think about something directly influences how we feel about it, and how we feel influences how we act. This isn't just philosophical speculation anymore. It's backed by decades of research and clinical practice. But here's what's truly remarkable. Neuroscience has revealed that our brains are far more plastic than we once believed. The neural pathways that carry our habitual thoughts can be rewired, reshaped, and redirected through conscious effort and repetition. Every time you think a thought, you're strengthening certain neural connections. Every time you repeat a mental pattern, you're making it more likely to occur again. This means that the voice in your head, the one that might currently be filled with self-doubt, criticism, or fear, can be trained to speak differently. The Buddha taught that we are what we think, that all suffering and joy spring forth from the mind. In the Dhammapada, one of Buddhism's most revered texts, we find these words: "All that we are is the result of what we have thought. The mind is everything. What we think, we become." This ancient understanding aligns remarkably with what modern neuroscience tells us about neuroplasticity and the power of repeated mental patterns. Consider for a moment the nature of your current inner dialogue. Is it kind or harsh? Is it encouraging or discouraging? Does it lift you up or tear you down? For many of us, if we're honest, we'd have to admit that we speak to ourselves in ways we would never speak to a friend. We carry on internal conversations filled with criticism, doubt, and judgment. We replay our mistakes endlessly, catastrophize about the future, and diminish our accomplishments. This harsh inner voice didn't develop overnight, and it won't change overnight either. It was formed through years of conditioning, through messages we received from others, through experiences that taught us to see ourselves and the world in particular ways. But understanding how this voice developed is the first step toward changing it. The Stoic philosophers understood something crucial about the relationship between our thoughts and our well-being. Marcus Aurelius, writing in his personal journal that would later become known as Meditations, reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This isn't about positive thinking or denial of reality. It's about recognizing that while we cannot control what happens to us, we can influence how we interpret and respond to what happens. One of the most liberating realizations you can have is this: you are not your thoughts. Your thoughts are mental events that arise and pass away, like clouds moving across the sky of your consciousness. You are the sky, not the clouds. You are the awareness that observes the thoughts, not the thoughts themselves. This distinction, recognized by contemplatives and psychologists alike, creates space between you and your mental chatter, space where choice becomes possible. When you begin to observe your thoughts rather than being completely identified with them, something remarkable happens. You start to notice patterns. You begin to see how certain types of thinking lead to certain emotional states. You recognize the difference between thoughts that serve you and thoughts that sabotage you. This awareness is the foundation of all mental transformation. The practice of mindfulness, rooted in Buddhist tradition but now widely embraced in Western psychology, teaches us to observe our thoughts without immediately believing them or acting on them. When a thought arises, instead of automatically accepting it as truth, we can pause and ask, is this thought helpful? Is it accurate? Is it serving my well-being and growth? Dr. Daniel Siegel, a prominent psychiatrist and researcher, uses the acronym RAIN to describe a mindful approach to difficult thoughts and emotions. Recognize what's happening, allow the experience to be there, investigate with kindness and natural awareness, not identifying with the experience. This process creates space between you and your automatic mental reactions, space where conscious choice becomes possible. But awareness alone, while crucial, is not enough. Once you begin to recognize unhelpful thought patterns, the next step is to actively work on replacing them with more constructive alternatives. This is where the practice of conscious self-talk comes in, where you begin to deliberately train your inner voice to speak in ways that support rather than undermine your well-being. The neuroscience behind this process is fascinating. Every time you consciously choose a different thought, you're literally rewiring your brain. Neurons that fire together wire together, as neuroscientist Donald Hebb famously observed. When you repeatedly choose thoughts of self-compassion over self-criticism, thoughts of possibility over limitation, thoughts of gratitude over complaint, you're strengthening those neural pathways and making them more likely to activate automatically in the future. This is why affirmations, when used skillfully, can be so powerful. It's not about magical thinking or pretending that problems don't exist. It's about deliberately choosing to focus your mental energy on thoughts that move you toward the person you want to become, rather than keeping you stuck in patterns that no longer serve you. The key to effective affirmations lies in making them believable and personally meaningful. Instead of trying to convince yourself of something that feels completely untrue, you can start with statements that feel possible, that represent the direction you want to move in, rather than a destination you've already reached. I am learning to be more patient with myself feels more authentic than I am perfectly patient. If patience is something you're working on developing. Ancient wisdom traditions understood the power of repetition in shaping the mind. In Hinduism, the practice of mantra involves the repetition of sacred sounds or phrases, not as empty ritual, but as a way of training the mind to rest in beneficial states. The word mantra itself comes from Sanskrit roots meaning mind and tool or instrument. A mantra is literally a tool for the mind. The Stoics had their own version of this practice. They would regularly remind themselves of key principles through what they called prososh, or spiritual exercises. These weren't just intellectual concepts to be understood, but practical wisdom to be internalized through repetition and reflection. Seneca wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end," reminding us that transformation is always possible, that we can always begin again with our thinking. One of the most profound shifts you can make in your inner dialogue is moving from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, terms popularized by psychologist Carol Dweck. A fixed mindset assumes that abilities, intelligence, and character are static traits that cannot be significantly developed. A growth mindset, on the other hand, sees these qualities as capable of development through effort, learning, and persistence. When your inner voice operates from a fixed mindset, it might say things like, "I'm just not good at this," or "I always mess things up," or "I'm not the type of person who can do that." These statements feel final, unchangeable, like verdicts rather than observations. But when you train your inner voice to speak from a growth mindset, the language shifts. "I'm not good at this yet," or "I made a mistake and I can learn from it," or "I'm developing the skills to do this." This small shift in language, this addition of words like "yet" and "so far" and "I'm learning," opens up possibilities that were previously closed. It transforms your relationship with challenges, failures, and setbacks. Instead of seeing them as evidence of your limitations, you begin to see them as information, as feedback, as opportunities for growth. The Buddhist concept of beginner's mind, or Shoshin, offers another powerful perspective on mental flexibility. Zen master Shunryu Suzuki wrote, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few." When your inner voice maintains a sense of curiosity and openness, when it approaches situations with fresh eyes rather than rigid assumptions, it creates space for learning, growth, and surprise. This doesn't mean abandoning expertise or experience. It means holding your knowledge lightly, remaining open to new information, new perspectives, new possibilities. It means training your inner voice to say, "I wonder," more often than "I know," to ask, "What can I learn from this?" rather than, "Why is this happening to me?" The practice of self-compassion, extensively researched by psychologist Kristin Neff, offers another crucial element in retraining your inner voice. Self-compassion involves treating yourself with the same kindness you would offer a good friend who was struggling. It means recognizing that making mistakes, facing challenges, and experiencing difficulties are part of the shared human experience, not evidence of your personal inadequacy. When your inner voice learns to speak with self-compassion, it stops being your harshest critic and becomes your wisest supporter. Instead of berating yourself for mistakes, it helps you learn from them. Instead of catastrophizing about challenges, it helps you find resources and solutions. Instead of comparing you unfavorably to others, it recognizes your unique path and progress. The Dalai Lama, when asked about his religion, once replied, "My religion is kindness." This simple statement points to something profound about how we might train our inner voice. What if kindness became the default setting of your internal dialogue? What if your first response to your own struggles was compassion rather than criticism? This doesn't mean becoming soft or permissive with yourself. True self-compassion includes what Neff calls fierce compassion, the willingness to make difficult changes and hold yourself accountable when necessary. But it does this from a place of care rather than condemnation, from a desire to help rather than harm. The ancient practice of loving-kindness meditation, found in Buddhist traditions, offers a systematic way to cultivate this compassionate inner voice. The practice typically begins with directing kind wishes toward yourself. May I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be at peace. This isn't just a nice sentiment, it's a training exercise for your mind, a way of strengthening neural pathways associated with self-care and well-being. Research has shown that regular loving-kindness practice actually changes brain structure, increasing grey matter in areas associated with emotional regulation and empathy. It's a clear example of how intentional mental training can create measurable changes in the brain, changes that support more positive and resilient thinking patterns. But perhaps one of the most important aspects of retraining your inner voice is learning to question the stories you tell yourself about who you are and what's possible for you. We all carry narratives about ourselves, stories that were often formed early in life and have been reinforced through years of repetition. These stories can be empowering or limiting, accurate or outdated, helpful or harmful. The narrative therapy approach, developed by Michael White and David Epstein, suggests that we are not our problems, but rather that problems are separate from our identity. This perspective allows us to examine our stories more objectively, to question whether they still serve us, and to consciously choose to emphasize different aspects of our experience. Your inner voice might have been telling you for years that you're not creative, or bad with money, or terrible at relationships. But these are stories, not immutable facts. They're interpretations of past experiences, not predictions of future possibilities. When you begin to recognize them as stories rather than truths, you create space to write new chapters. The Stoic practice of the view from above offers another powerful tool for gaining perspective on your mental patterns. Marcus Aurelius regularly reminded himself to zoom out, to see his current concerns from a broader perspective of time and space. When you train your inner voice to occasionally step back and take this wider view, many of the things that seem overwhelming in the moment reveal themselves to be temporary and manageable. This practice isn't about minimizing real challenges or dismissing genuine concerns. It's about maintaining perspective, about remembering that this too shall pass, that you have survived difficulties before and developed strength and wisdom in the process. Your inner voice can learn to remind you of your resilience rather than focusing only on your vulnerabilities. The concept of post-traumatic growth, researched extensively by psychologists Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun, shows that people can actually become stronger and wiser through facing significant challenges. This doesn't mean that difficult experiences are good or that we should seek them out. But it does mean that your inner voice can learn to look for growth and meaning even in difficult circumstances. To ask, how might I grow from this? Alongside, how can I get through this? One of the most practical ways to begin retraining your inner voice is through the practice of cognitive restructuring, a core technique in cognitive behavioral therapy. This involves learning to identify unhelpful thought patterns and systematically replacing them with more balanced and realistic alternatives. Common unhelpful thinking patterns include all or nothing thinking, where everything is seen as either perfect or terrible with no middle ground. Catastrophizing, where you assume the worst possible outcome will occur. Mind reading, where you assume you know what others are thinking. And fortune telling, where you predict negative futures as if they were certain facts. When you notice these patterns in your inner dialogue, you can gently challenge them. Instead of accepting the thought, "I always mess everything up," you might ask yourself, is this really true? Can I think of times when I handled things well? What would I tell a friend who was thinking this way about themselves? This process isn't about forcing positive thoughts or denying real problems. It's about developing a more balanced and realistic inner voice. One that can acknowledge difficulties without being overwhelmed by them. One that can see possibilities without ignoring challenges. The practice of gratitude offers another powerful way to influence your inner dialogue. When you regularly direct your attention toward what's working in your life, what you appreciate, what brings you joy, you're training your brain to notice and focus on positive aspects of your experience. This doesn't mean ignoring problems or pretending everything is perfect. It means developing a more complete picture that includes both challenges and blessings. Research by psychologists like Robert Emmons has shown that regular gratitude practice can improve mood, increase life satisfaction, and even boost immune function. Your inner voice can learn to regularly ask questions like, "What went well today?" and "What am I grateful for?" These questions direct your attention in ways that support well-being and resilience. The ancient Stoic practice of negative visualization, or premeditatio malorum, might seem to contradict the emphasis on positive thinking, but it actually serves a similar purpose. By occasionally imagining the loss of things you value, you develop greater appreciation for what you currently have. Your inner voice learns to say, "I'm fortunate to have this," rather than taking good things for granted. This practice also builds psychological resilience by helping you realize that you could cope with difficulties if they arose. It's not about dwelling on worst-case scenarios, but about developing confidence in your ability to handle whatever life brings. Your inner voice becomes less fearful and more courageous when it knows you have inner resources to draw upon. The concept of response flexibility, developed by psychiatrist Daniel Siegel, describes the ability to pause between stimulus and response, to choose your reaction rather than being driven by automatic patterns. This flexibility is crucial for retraining your inner voice. When you notice an unhelpful thought arising, you can pause and ask, "Is there another way to think about this? What would be most helpful right now?" This pause, this moment of conscious choice, is where transformation happens. It's the space between the old pattern and the new possibility, the moment where you can choose to respond from wisdom rather than react from habit. Your inner voice can learn to create and use these pauses, to slow down the automatic flow of thoughts and introduce more conscious intention. The practice of meditation, in its many forms, is essentially training in this kind of awareness and choice. Whether you're focusing on your breath, observing your thoughts, or cultivating loving kindness, you're developing the mental muscles needed to work skillfully with your inner dialogue. You're learning to be present with whatever arises in your mind without being overwhelmed or controlled by it. But meditation isn't the only way to develop this awareness. Any activity that requires present moment attention can serve this purpose. Walking in nature, creating art, playing music, engaging in meaningful conversation, all of these can help you develop the capacity to observe your thoughts and choose your responses more consciously. The key is consistency rather than perfection. Just as you wouldn't expect to develop physical fitness by exercising once, you can't expect to retrain your inner voice through occasional effort. It requires regular, patient practice, the willingness to keep returning to more helpful patterns of thinking, even when old habits reassert themselves. This is where self-compassion becomes crucial again. When you notice that your inner voice has slipped back into old patterns of criticism or worry, you can treat this as information rather than failure. You can gently redirect your attention, like a kind teacher helping a student who has gotten distracted. The goal isn't to eliminate all unhelpful thoughts, that's neither possible nor necessary, but to develop a different relationship with them. The ancient Chinese philosophy of Taoism offers the concept of Wu Wei, often translated as non-action or effortless action. This doesn't mean being passive, but rather working with natural forces rather than against them. When it comes to retraining your inner voice, this might mean accepting that change takes time, that there will be setbacks, that progress isn't always linear. Your inner voice can learn to be patient with the process of change, to celebrate small improvements rather than demanding instant transformation. It can learn to say, "I'm making progress," rather than "I'm not there yet," to focus on the direction you're moving rather than the distance you still have to travel. The neuroscientist Rick Hanson uses the phrase "taking in the good" to describe the practice of consciously savoring positive experiences. Because our brains are naturally wired to notice and remember negative events more strongly than positive ones, an evolutionary adaptation that helped our ancestors survive, we need to make extra effort to internalize positive experiences. This means training your inner voice to linger on moments of joy, success, connection, and beauty. Instead of quickly moving past positive experiences, you can learn to pause and really take them in, to let them register in your memory and nervous system. Your inner voice can learn to say, "This is good, I want to remember this," when something positive happens. The practice of visualization, used by athletes, performers, and therapists, offers another tool for retraining your inner voice. When you regularly imagine yourself handling challenges with skill and grace, when you mentally rehearse responding to difficulties with wisdom and courage, you're creating neural pathways that support these behaviors in real life. Your inner voice can learn to regularly remind you of your capabilities, to recall times when you've overcome obstacles, to envision yourself growing and learning from whatever challenges you face. This isn't about unrealistic optimism, but about maintaining a balanced perspective that includes your strengths and resources alongside your vulnerabilities and limitations. The concept of psychological flexibility, central to acceptance and commitment therapy developed by Stephen Hayes, emphasizes the importance of being able to adapt your thinking and behavior to different situations. A psychologically flexible inner voice doesn't rigidly stick to one way of thinking, but can adjust its perspective based on what's most helpful in each moment. Sometimes your inner voice needs to be encouraging and supportive. Sometimes it needs to be realistic and cautious. Sometimes it needs to push you toward growth, and sometimes it needs to remind you to rest and recover. The key is developing the wisdom to know what's needed when, and the flexibility to adjust accordingly. This kind of wisdom develops through experience, through paying attention to what works and what doesn't, through learning from both successes and mistakes. Your inner voice can become increasingly sophisticated in its guidance, less reactive and more responsive, less automatic and more intentional. The ancient Greek concept of eudaimonia, often translated as happiness but more accurately understood as flourishing or living well, provides a helpful framework for thinking about the ultimate goal of retraining your inner voice. It's not about feeling good all the time or avoiding all difficulties. It's about developing the inner resources to live with wisdom, courage, and compassion, regardless of external circumstances. Your inner voice, when properly trained, becomes an ally in this pursuit of eudaimonia. It helps you make choices aligned with your deepest values. It supports you through challenges and celebrates your growth. It reminds you of what matters most when you get caught up in temporary concerns. It becomes a source of wisdom rather than worry, of encouragement rather than criticism. The journey of retraining your inner voice is ultimately a journey of coming home to yourself, of developing a kinder, wiser, more supportive relationship with your own mind. It's about recognizing that you have more influence over your mental experience than you might have realized and taking responsibility for using that influence skillfully. This doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen without effort. But it is possible, and it's one of the most valuable investments you can make in your well-being and growth. Every moment of awareness, every conscious choice to think more helpfully, every act of self-compassion contributes to this transformation. As you continue on this journey, remember that you're not trying to create a perfect inner voice that never has doubts or concerns. You're developing a more balanced, wise, and supportive internal dialogue that can help you navigate life's challenges with greater skill and resilience. You're learning to be your own best friend, your own wise counselor, your own source of encouragement and support. The voice that speaks to you most often can become your greatest ally in creating the life you want to live. It can remind you of your values when you're tempted to compromise them. It can encourage you to take healthy risks when fear holds you back. It can help you learn from mistakes without being crushed by them. It can celebrate your progress without becoming complacent. This transformation of your inner voice is both a deeply personal journey and a gift to everyone around you. When you speak to yourself with kindness and wisdom, you naturally extend that same quality of attention to others. When you approach your own challenges with curiosity and courage, you model these qualities for those who observe you. When you treat yourself with compassion, you create space for others to do the same. The ripple effects of this inner work extend far beyond your own experience. They touch your relationships, your work, your community, and the world. Every person who learns to speak to themselves with greater wisdom and kindness contributes to a more compassionate and conscious world. So, as you continue to train your inner voice, remember that you're engaged in one of the most important and transformative practices available to human beings. You're not just changing your thoughts, you're changing your life. You're not just improving your mental habits, you're developing your capacity for wisdom, resilience, and joy. The voice in your head will continue to speak as long as you live. The question is, what will it say? How will it speak to you in moments of challenge and triumph, in times of uncertainty and clarity, in periods of growth and rest? The answer to that question is increasingly in your hands, shaped by the choices you make each day about how to direct your attention and what thoughts to cultivate. Train your inner voice well, and it will serve you well. Treat it as the powerful tool for transformation that it is, and it will help you create a life of greater meaning, connection, and fulfillment. The conversation you have with yourself is the most important conversation you'll ever have. Make it a good one.